大家好，我姓龚，叫龚磊茶。Hello everybody, I'm Richard Gong of Work to Live podcast version. So this time is a lecture of Chinese language. So I'm a native speaker of Japanese language. Anyway, I have studied sort of Chinese language, which is why I can teach you sort of Chinese language, and of course and first of all this time is really a basic lecture, teaching you how to pronounce pinyin. If you have learned Chinese language, what you studied at first is pinyin. How to pronounce Chinese language. Pinyin is, and in short, maybe some of you, most of you have heard. Even if you haven't studied Chinese language, you have heard of that. There are many variations of pronunciation having the same pronunciation. Maybe what you have heard is stuff like that, and typical example of Mandarin. What I have learned is Mandarin, or Putonghua in Chinese language, and which is a standard language of China. Mandarin or Putonghua is standard language of China, and if you have, and what I can teach you is parts of that standard language of China, and example of pinyin is ma and ma. Generally speaking, there are 4 variations having the same spelling. How should I say? Maybe that is a correct expression for explaining pinyin, explaining the example of pinyin. So I will tell you again. So using the example, and the example is ma and ma. And generally, I said 5 ma's. I said 5 ma's in Chinese language with different intonations. And maybe if you have not studied Chinese language, or if you are not familiar with Chinese language or Chinese people, maybe what you heard were 5 same pronunciations. So maybe if you are beginner of studying Chinese language, that is true, or that is the case. And if you'd like to distinguish those 5 pronunciations, what I recommend you is understanding the combinations of kanjis, because understanding intonation or variation of just one Chinese character is difficult. I will tell you again. For example, I said 5 ma's in Chinese language, and for example, if I say ma, and it's tough for you to distinguish which ma I pronounced. Which is why what I recommend is that you understand Chinese language by combinations of 2 or more Chinese characters. For example, although you can't understand, let me use another case, or let me use another example. For example, if you can't understand which variation I pronounce. For example, if you can't understand which variation I pronounced, for example, I'm going to pronounce pin. So pin. For example, I pronounce pin, and if you can't understand which variation of pin I pronounced, it is fine. It is still fine, because in the case of conversations, or when communicating, when conversing, or when talking each other with Chinese people, most people, all the people use sentences or phrases or nouns having nouns which are composed of many words, which means, for example, most people do not communicate using only pin or only ma. For example, how to say apple in Chinese language is pinguo. So, pinguo is apple, which is the same as the name of the red fruit you can imagine with apple, or the name of that famous company, which had been founded by Mr. Steve Jobs, who passed away years before. Anyway, language, you can if you are Chinese person, what you hear are many Chinese characters when talking with, for example, when talking with friends or when talking with members of your family in Chinese language. And in such a situation of conversations in Chinese language, what you hear are a series of Chinese characters or series of hands, which is why it's fine to extract some combinations of Chinese characters out of what is talked among Chinese people, by doing which you can understand what is being talked about from in the conversations of Chinese people. And of course, it's really difficult for non-native speakers to understand what is talked about between Chinese people. But what I want you to know is that you do not have to distinguish a variation or intonation of just one Chinese character. What matters is to understand conversation, or what matters is to understand what other people were telling you, or what matters is to understand what Chinese people are talking each other, stuff like that. Which means, it's really a rare case that you have to, or you need to understand, or you need to distinguish the variation of those pinyin pronunciations of just one Chinese character, which is what I'd like you to know. So, and this is all. If you'd like to learn Chinese languages, the education materials teaching Chinese language are live, and you can understand many great resources of teaching you Chinese characters. So I don't recommend you using my podcast for learning Chinese. I recommend you using decent materials for teaching you Chinese characters, which is also what I'd like you to know. So but I can tell you how to understand or how to distinguish pinyin, because I have had troubles in understanding or learning Chinese pinyin, because I'm a non-native speaker of Chinese language, and my mother tongue is Japanese, and although Japanese language is fairly close to Chinese language, but in the point at which Japanese is close to Chinese language is only Chinese characters. When it comes to the pronunciation of Chinese characters, Japanese language and Chinese language are almost totally different. Please understand that. It's fine to understand like that. And which is why, going back to the original topic, the recommended manner is to understand the combination of the pronunciations of two or more Chinese characters, which is what I'd like you to know this time. That's it. Thank you very much for your listening. 再见. See you.